Okay, so we're ready to go. I'm going to introduce our first storyteller. Her name is Lindsay O'Connor. Lindsay is here with us. She grew up in Georgia. She's lived in New Orleans. She's lived in Charlottesville and Austin before arriving in Middleburg 2 years ago. She has waited tables, taught college courses, worked as a costume Renaissance fair wench, theatrically arm wrestled, and researched disaster in Southern literature. She currently teaches English at a boarding school in Loudoun County. So, welcome, Lindsay.
All right. It is a hot, humid day in late June. I'm riding in the passenger seat of a car down a deserted, hurricane-ravaged street in New Orleans East. I'm with my work partner, Ben. Our destination is the two houses that are newly standing at the end of this street that's full of empty concrete foundations. We pull up in front of where we're going. We stop the car. We leave it running with the AC on and go through our pre-investigation ritual, which is just going through our files, making sure we know the names, the dates, everything we need to know to not look like idiots when we go to try to talk to the people we're trying to talk to. As we're doing this, I hear a knock on the window that startles me, and then suddenly someone's yelling, "Get out the car!" So I get out of the car, and I'm facing a man with no shirt on, who's sweating, who's puffing his chest out, he's really muscly, and he has a gun tucked into the waistband of his jeans. This is the summer of 2009. It's almost 4 years after Katrina ravaged New Orleans, 4 years after I had to evacuate because of Katrina. And it's 1 year after I've started a really tough graduate program in English because I think I want to be an English professor. That program was really difficult. It was really hard, and the people were really tough to be around, and I was thinking about quitting. I was fortunate enough, though, to have this really wonderful, generous fellowship that gave me the money to spend my summer volunteering in New Orleans. So I decided I was going to go back to New Orleans to work on some of my survivor's guilt from Katrina. I stumbled into this internship with Orleans Public Defenders, where I was going to be working to provide a zealous, just defense to people who were accused of crimes and didn't have the money to pay for a lawyer. So that's how I got to be a 25-year-old English grad student standing on a street in New Orleans with a man with a gun. I was with my partner, Ben. I looked to him for support here because he was the one who was always organized. He was a 21-year-old Duke College student who really wanted to go to law school. So he was actually really good at remembering names and remembering court dates and what happened in what order and all of that kind of stuff. I looked to him here in this situation where I think both of us really wanted to panic. He was frozen. So I was the one who had to respond. He couldn't say anything, and I just said everything. I just started talking, and I just kept talking. We knew that this was going to be probably a tough investigation. It was the first time that we were going to be seeing not a friend or a family member of the person that we were defending, but what's called a complaining witness. If you don't work in legal world, you may not know what that means, but you're probably familiar with the term victim. So the person we were looking for was the person that our client had allegedly shot a few months prior, and we were also looking for his cousin who had been there on that day. So we knew it was going to be tough, but nobody told me there was going to be a gun. Ben's frozen. I'm just talking and talking and talking. Somehow I'm making progress. We move from the street, we're into the driveway. I'm managing to get out all of the things I legally am required to say, my name, client's name, all of that kind of stuff. I get to the point where I ask this guy, who's still yelling at me, still has a gun in his pants, what his name is. My name? My name is Mike Tyson. I know that he meant that to be aggressive, just like everything else he was doing, but it was, of course, really funny. So I smiled, he smiled, and it ended up being like the thing that returned us to being human beings. Pretty soon after that, he was like, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go get the guy that you're looking for. So he turns and he goes back into his house. I look over at Ben, we kind of heave a sigh of relief, and he comes back out. This time he's wearing a shirt, he doesn't appear to have a gun, he takes his hand out to shake my hand, and he introduces himself as one of the people that I'm looking for. I'm gonna keep calling him Mike Tyson though for this story, because it's just better. So he's actually the cousin of the person that our client allegedly shot. He invites us into his house, and we sit down in his living room. My job here with Ben now is going to be to get a statement from each of these guys. Ideally, those things will happen separately because we don't want them to influence each other's statements. One of the only rules, really, of being an investigator for Orleans Public Defenders is you never leave your partner. You never split up. Pretty understandable at this point. But we look around at this situation and we see that it is never going to work for us to take these guys separately to take statements. So Ben and I share another knowing look, and we decide we're going to split up. So he goes in the other room with the cousin, and I'm hanging out with Mike Tyson, this rapport that we seem to have built, in the living room. And I start asking him all the questions I'm supposed to ask him. Where were you? What was going on that day? Who was where? Whatever. But pretty quickly, we're branching out way beyond the day that his cousin allegedly was shot by our client. Something somebody told me early on in this job is that I should be ready for someone to share too much, that there was going to be somebody who ended up telling me way more than I ever wanted to know, that they were going to go way off topic. I was really looking forward to that day, honestly. But I did not think Mike Tyson was going to be that guy, but he was. So we talk about the day that his cousin was allegedly shot, but then pretty quickly we're talking about Hurricane Katrina. We're talking about his evacuation, about his family, and about his struggle to come back. The house that we're sitting in is one that he built. The one next door is one that he built, all for his family, for his cousins, for his aunties, for his mom. Also, they have a place to come back home to, and they're the first people in this whole neighborhood to make it back. He tells me about that. He tells me about his ex, the woman that he loved, the woman that broke his heart. Shortly after we have opened the family photo album, and we're putting all kinds of photographs and faces to the names and the stories that he has told me, there is a intense, ardent knock at the door. Mike yells and tells whoever it is to go away. Person knocks again. It's a young teenage girl's voice, and she's like, no, this is really important. So he goes to the door, opens it, and it is this teenage girl. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm talking to this lady, And she's like, no, this is really important. Michael Jackson just died. So Mike takes a few steps back. Like, it looks like he's been physically wounded by this news. She goes on her way, and I spend the rest of my time with my new friend Mike Tyson watching the TV news coverage of Michael Jackson's death. We're watching the videos, we're watching the photographs, all the people remembering him, hearing about the struggle of his life, all the controversies in it and all of that. I will never forget Mike Tyson looking at that screen, looking at me, looking down, and saying, he got real weird there at the end, but Michael Jackson was my boy. Pretty soon after all of that commotion, Ben comes out of the other room. He's taken a statement from the cousin. I've somehow managed to take a statement from my friend Mike Tyson. We say a cordial goodbye, we go on our way. We go back to the office, we write up our really boring legal memos. I'm sure we were very popular at happy hour telling the story of that day to our coworkers. Ben and I went on to go on many other really interesting investigations that are probably story-worthy. Luckily, none involve guns. I don't remember the name of our client. I don't even remember what happened to his case. I assume it got into a plea deal, as things normally do. But what I do remember, of course, is Mike Tyson and how much anger he had. All of the stuff that he had been through, and how the way he knew how to deal with that was through aggression. But it was so much more beautiful when there was someone there to ask him what happened, when I was able to say, tell me more, what happened next? And I'm sorry for all that stuff that happened to you. I went to New Orleans that summer because I was looking for a way out. I was trying to think about what to do next because I was thinking of quitting this graduate program that I was in. But the same way that I didn't quit on that investigation that I could have probably just gotten back in the car and excused myself and left for, I didn't quit my grad program. I studied, I wrote about New Orleans and disaster and trauma, and I finally graduated. And while I'll probably never do work that's as vital and important and powerful as providing a defense to people who don't have the money to afford a defense when they're accused of a felony, I'm a teacher now, and I still think about how I learned that Michael Jackson died and about listening to Mike Tyson's story and how transformative it was for me as a listener. So I think about that now as I work with my students who are trying to figure out what stories they want to tell and what stories they need to tell.